Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. We are live on YouTube. A couple of things that we need everybody to do. The YouTube stream will pick up the microphones of who's talking, and that's the person who will be featured. And so if you're not actively talking, please mute your mic. If your mic isn't mute, I will mute for you. And so if you want to start talking, just make sure that your mic is unmuted before you start talking. But we are live.
Thank you, Brother Paul Mark. And if we could ask everyone to put their phone on mute. Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Fort Myers Alumni Chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi's Virtual Candidate Town Hall Forum. My name is Isaac Dozier, and I am the Political Action Chair for the Fort Myers Alumni Chapter. It's with great pleasure I welcome you to our very first Virtual Candidates Town Hall Forum. Tonight is very special because you will be hearing from our local civic leaders and our local political candidates. Our goal for this evening is to educate the voters about the unique concerns facing the Black community living here in Southwest Florida. And most importantly, we want to get to know our local candidates. On behalf of over 170,000 men of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, who preside all over the world, we invite you to exercise your personal responsibility to vote and listen intentionally to the civic leaders represented here tonight. This will be a two-part forum. The first hour will be a conversation with the two City of Fort Myers mayoral candidates, and the second hour will be dedicated to the candidates running for Florida's 19th Congressional District. Our moderators for this evening are Brother David Shaw and Brother Stephen Love. Both of these gentlemen have had the distinguished honor of serving our community as members of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated for over 50 years. The next voice you will hear will be Pastor Ken Burns, who is providing our opening invocation, followed by Tony Allen, the Vice Polemarch for Fort Myers Alumni Chapter, who will then explain the guidelines for tonight's virtual town hall forum.
Thank you, Brother Dozier. Let's take a moment out to pray. Gracious Lord, our Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come before you and to represent you in all that you do, all that we do, oh God. We ask you, Father, that your spirit come in the midst of us and that we do things decent and in order and that we glorify you in this effort. Help us around our hearts and our minds around this community, that we may service it well and be your servants to do your will and your work. Again, Father, we ask for your presence in this meeting, and we'll be careful to give you praise, glory, and honor for all that takes place here this evening. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Next, you will hear from our Vice Polemarch, Brother Tony Allen.
Good evening, everyone. I'll be providing the rules for our forum this evening. Our first guideline is each candidate will be asked 9 questions. The moderator is responsible for introducing each co-host. Each co-host will have no more than 1 minute to introduce their organization and pose the prepared question. Each candidate to 2 minutes to answer each question. The moderator is responsible for providing a nonverbal 30-second cue to the candidate when time is running out. The moderator is responsible for maintaining strict guidelines during this forum. You'll be hearing from our moderator for this portion of our forum, Brother Stephen Love.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Allen, and welcome to the Kappa Alpha Psi Virtual Candidates Forum for the Office of Mayor of Fort Myers. I would like to introduce to our viewers our two candidates that are here with us today. First, Fort Myers City Councilman Kevin Anderson, and next, Ms. Jacquelyn McMiller. Candidates, we have panelists with us today who will be asking questions to you. As Mr. Allen said, after a panelist asks his question or her question, you will have 2 minutes to answer. When we have 30 seconds left to answer, I will raise this red card. So please keep your eye on me. And at the end of 2 minutes, you will hear me say that your time is up. The candidates that you see here will be answering questions one at a time from a panel of African American fraternity and sororities, also known as the Divine Nine. On our panel, we have Todd Thomas of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity, Pastor Alan Stockton of the Lee Interfaith for Empowerment of Lee County, who also is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, Willie Sparrow of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, Tony Allen of Kappa Alpha Psi, Kurt Sherd of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, Asante Boyd of Sigma Gamma Rho sorority, and lastly, Jerry Ware of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Our topics tonight will cover 5 areas: affordable housing development and gentrification, equitable allocation of city dollars across all neighborhoods, Black Lives Matter, police policy reform, and minority business development. So, if everyone's ready, let's begin. We are going to ask that whoever answers the first question will then be followed by the second candidate. And then for the second question, we will rotate. So we're going to start with the first question with Councilman Anderson. And our first topic this evening covers a very important issue that is on the minds of many residents: affordable housing development and gentrification. And your question is from Todd Thomas of Phi Beta Sigma. Mr. Thomas?
Thank you very much, Mr. Love. Good evening, everyone. I'm representing Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, founded January 9th, 1914, under the principles of brotherhood, scholarship, and service. Some of our members include esteemed members such as George Washington Carver, James Weldon Johnson, and our Honorable John Lewis, Congressman, who just left us on the earth. We are, again, 130,000 conscious college-educated men. And I'll move into my question, which is around affordable housing development and gentrification. So there are several multifamily developments with apartment units that are sprouting up within the inner core neighborhoods or around the inner core neighborhoods of the Dunbar community in Fort Myers. As a result, there appears to have been an increase in leasing and rental costs. This increase in rental or leasing costs is, or it appears to be, pricing out many of the local Southwest Florida residents that are in need of attainable housing that they can afford. So here's my question. What is your strategy to bridge the gap between the need for attainable housing and those low-wage earners seeking rental housing?
Councilman Anderson.
Well, thank you very much, Todd. According to a report by the International Economic Development Council, complete gentrification has only occurred in about 5% of low-income neighborhoods, mostly in high-density, very populated urban areas. So hopefully, as we develop, we won't see that type of impact on Fort Myers. Now, what I would propose doing is, making sure we keep people in the Dunbar community, and not only keep people there, but try to bring people back. And we can do this by promoting home ownership through a variety of different programs, home ownership counseling, with providing down payment assistance and credit counseling programs. And also, once people are housed, that we make available eviction prevention counseling as well. Along with that, we need to continue pushing for economic development so that we attract jobs to Fort Myers that are paying good salaries. We also need to continue commitment with the Fort Myers Technical School and make sure that we're training our young people, those who will not be going on to college, but that we help train them to prepare them for jobs that are higher paying than your normal retail services and restaurants and those type of jobs.
Thank you very much, Councilman Anderson. Ms. McMiller, you have 2 minutes.
Let me take myself off of mute. Well, one of the first things, and thank you, gentlemen, for having me here, is to recognize the fact that we need to have that affordable housing and attainable housing. One of the things that we need to do is specifically start offering and providing the training for those specific skills that the economy needs in the city of Fort Myers and within the surrounding areas. So once we do that, promoting certain programs such as community land trust for attainable housing, where we have and we start to build that the generational wealth, and bringing in where we can actually have places where that can provide the funding for these families and for these people that are living here in the city, but also are dedicated to being here within the city and living here and growing and raising their children here. So we have to bring some programs here. There are many programs around the country. For example, the Community Land Trust, the Housing Trust Funds. There are a lot of programs that are out there that we can utilize within the city to provide this. In addition to that, we can also team with the county. Because of the fact that the city is so small, there are certain programs that we cannot utilize from the federal government. If we can team with the county and be able to do that, we can also bring that funding into the city of Fort Myers as well. And thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you, for your responses. As a follow-up on this topic, our next question was provided by the Lee Interfaith for Empowerment of Lee County. And we're going to rotate who goes first. So this question will be for Ms. McMiller. And Pastor Alan Stockton of Life and Kappa Alpha Psi will ask the question. Pastor Stockton.
Pastor Stockton is not connected. Please go ahead and ask the question, Brother Love.
Thank you very much. The question is, the city of Fort Myers is facing a shortage of attainable housing opportunities within the city limits. Historically, redevelopment efforts within the city have led to gentrification and mass displacement of low-income residents of color. The current city council has opted not to fund an affordable housing trust fund presented by local clergy and civic leaders. Instead, the city is proposing rent subsidies for families earning $75,000 a year or less. So the question is, if elected mayor, which of the two plans will you support and why? And we'll start with Ms. McMiller.
Well, I would definitely support the Housing Trust Fund. That is going to start building community wealth, but also generational wealth as well. One of the things that we're going to have to assess is the area median income and what they're basing that on. Apparently, I believe it's about 130%, which is astronomical. Most of the people, 16% of the people that live in this city earn less than $15,000 a year. So if we're looking at that, and you kind of think about the fact that also about 5.5% earn less than between 15 and 20,000, and 15% earn between 20 and $40,000 per year. So if you're looking at that 130% AMI, it is not going to meet the needs of the people of the city. It is not going to provide attainable income. The numbers speak for themselves. If we start looking at the Housing Trust Fund, where we have the land trust as well, this will provide where the land stays at a fixed amount to some degree, but also they can build the homes on there. Now we have generational wealth that starts to build within the city of Fort Myers. That's the purpose, and that's one of the things that I'm focused on, lowering the amount of the area median income from the 130 at least to between 90 and 80%, where we can actually afford it, to make it attainable where the people of the city can afford to pay. So how can we build? Make it attainable, not only affordable, but make it attainable where they can work and earn a decent income and pay their bills.
Thank you very much, Ms. McMiller. Councilman Anderson, you have 2 minutes.
If I could just make a correction, when we voted Monday, I believe it was, or Tuesday at the budget hearing, we lowered the AMI to 80%. So it's not just from 100 to 120, we lowered it, so now it's 80 to 120. But we also need to keep in mind that with the Fort Myers Housing Authority, we have over 1,400 affordable units plus 2,100 vouchers that address people who earn under 80% AMI. The council also recently voted to give a matching fund to St. Peter Claver Catholic Charities project that's going to go on, be built on Michigan Avenue. We voted to give them a $50,000 match. Plus, with the Community Redevelopment Agency, we also voted for the tax rebates. Now they're going to address people who earn under 50% AMI. We also have a project that's going up at Colonial and Winkler that the council approved, which is geared toward people with special needs, handicap. And that, again, is for people who are earning under 80% AMI. Now, with that being said, we still need to find ways to make more affordable housing available. And a couple things that we do as a city is we do sell surplus land. And we sell those lots for an average of $500 when they're worth $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. We also offer tax rebates for projects as well. We're doing what we can to help promote home ownership. The problem is it's very difficult for the city to compete with market forces. That doesn't mean we can't contribute. We do work closely with Lee County and the federal government. We're always applying for grants along with supporting the Housing Authority. So it's not that we have ignored affordable housing. We just haven't been able to keep up with the need.
Thank you very much, both of you, for your response. So we're going to move on to our next topic. Ms. McMiller and Councilman Anderson, one of the responsibilities of city government is to provide resources and services to meet the needs of all taxpayers. On the next topic of equitable allocation of city dollars across all neighborhoods, our next panel question is from William Sparrow of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity. Mr. Sparrow.
Good evening, and initiate of the Zyma Crime Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, founded December 4, 1906, campus of Cornell University on a cold Tuesday. We are servants. Excuse me, I have something stuck in my throat. Ate too much a little earlier, but counted honored members include the late Justice Thurgood Marshall, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Jesse Owens. The list goes on of great alpha men that have contributed to the world that we live in today. And I'm honored to be with my brother. Our question is, for many, there have been several locations with Paul, Lawrence, Dunbar, and Society Hill neighborhoods that have heavy industrialized companies such as junkyards and chemical plants that have been allowed to operate near family communities. Most of these companies are nestled in between single-family home ownership neighborhoods owned by people of color. My question to you both, how do you plan on addressing the racial injustice specific to the environmental and safety concerns that have been caused due to inequitable concentration of industrialized toxic waste sites within these communities?
And that question, we'll start with Councilman Anderson.
Years ago, we made a change to the charter, which prevents junkyards and business of that nature from coming into the city. We have been struggling with how do we deal with those who are already existing. They do have property rights, just like any other property owner. As we continue to grow the city, we need to work harder to identify areas to hopefully relocate or work harder to relocate these industrial areas away from the residential neighborhoods. You know, in a lot of cases, these sites were there prior to neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods have expanded toward them. In some cases, they came in after the neighborhoods. Regardless, we need to change that. We are not allowing new businesses of that nature in, and we need to work harder. And I'm committed to making that happen. It does affect those wards, those areas. There's no doubt about it. And you know, unfortunately, this has gone on for decades. I have always advocated and continue to advocate for putting more emphasis on wards 1, 2, and 3 to bring them up closer to the other wards, to have it more equitably, the services spread out amongst the city, and to improve the neighborhoods in wards 1, 2, and 3. Because not only does that benefit the city, it also benefits the homeowners. Because if we can increase the property values in those wards, then you increase the equity in those homes, and you help the property owners, the homeowners build wealth.
Thank you very much. Ms. McMiller, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, I believe due to some technical difficulties, you kind of went out a little bit. But just to address that, I'll be honest with you. I've read a lot about what's been happening with the junkyards and within the areas in the city of Fort Myers and in the neighborhoods. If you can imagine, the African American neighborhood and the neighborhoods with people of color are the ones that are dealing with this problem. No other neighborhoods are dealing with this situation. The other thing is, in all reality, these places, they cannot open any other junkyards and businesses such as this. However, there's nothing that the city has looked into or that I've seen that they can do about these places unless they purchase it outright at an astronomical amount, because of the fact that the owner knows that he can basically, he has a stronghold on us. So what can we do? We can purchase that property. However, we can lower the amount that we're giving on the developments downtown, be able to take that money away and save that money to put towards purchasing and buying out these junkyards. And let's be real, the property values are not going to go up and you can't invest in that because no one wants to go and build next door to a junkyard. So what are you going to do with that? We need to start utilizing that money, taking the monies within the city and putting it towards those areas that have been neglected for years. Make that area, bring the area up, the cost of the homes, the prices of those homes, the land where it can increase, and we can get rid of those junkyards. But until then, it is not going to happen the way we've been doing it within the city as it has been now.
Thank you both for your responses. As a follow-up on this topic, our next question comes from Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. And to ask their question will be Tony Allen of Kappa Alpha Psi. Mr. Allen.
Again, we'll credit Kappa Alpha for this question. And their question is a two-part question. What plan for the beautification of the Paul Lawrence Dunbar East Fort Myers census tract? And also, how will you specifically address this through minority business enterprises and the development of more socially friendly curb appeal that caters to the needs of the community?
And we'll begin with Ms. McMiller.
There is a lot of construction and a lot of development that's happening. All of that development that's happening in the Midtown project in downtown, all of those funds are staying within that area. So what we need to do, City of Fort Myers is divided, and we already know this. And if we're city, some of those funds and some of those monies should be put towards the beautification of all of these areas. In the Dunbar area, the Dunbar project, the corridor itself, that infrastructure needs to be updated. And that's where we can look where those funds can come from. The construction, the building, the businesses, we need to reinvest into minority businesses. Many, many years ago, in which we've forgotten for a long time, all of those areas were owned by small minority businesses. And this area flourished. The Dunbar community flourished. It is not like that anymore. We need to bring funding back to the equitable funding back to the minority businesses, focus on that, look at grants that will be able to supplement those minority businesses, to bring the businesses there, to increase the funding that's within that area and increase the infrastructure and do better on the infrastructure. We need to work on that. The money is here. It just needs to be reallocated in the right place.
Thank you very much, Ms. McMiller. Councilman Anderson.
Thank you. It sounds very good to say, take the money from downtown and Midtown. Only one problem. Legally, you can't do that because the money that's used to do the construction in downtown and Midtown is based through the Community Redevelopment Agency, and those dollars have to stay within those boundaries. Now, there is a Martin Luther King, Michigan corridor CRA, and those dollars, well, certainly that's will be used with the St. Peter Claver project. Those can be used, but until those dollars are built up, you can't spend them. But you just can't take it from one CRA and spend it in another. One of my plans that I've been calling for and working hard on is to revitalize the Dunbar community. And it's interesting that we refer to it as Dunbar when in reality, Dunbar is one small neighborhood within a much larger area. There are over 200 subdivisions in Fort Myers, and there's several in the greater Dunbar area. My plan is to take it one neighborhood at a time and start in the core and change the traffic flow in the neighborhood so it's more like a gated community without being a gated community, improve the infrastructure, improve the streeting, the sidewalks, the lighting, have grants available to help people landscape their properties, and then also improve the exterior of their homes. We also have a project or a program where people can apply for low interest loans and grants to improve the interior of their property. But start one neighborhood at a time and put a sign, just like you see in gated communities, that identify the community. Then you start with the neighborhoods around it, and then before you know it, you've got the entire community done, and you've improved, revitalized those neighborhoods, improved the property values, help people with their wealth.
Thank you very much, both of you, for your responses. We're going to move on to a new topic. An important topic today is the Black Lives Matter movement. The movement is a deep question from Asante Boyd of Sigma Gamma Rho sorority. Ms. Boyd.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Asante Boyd, and I'm the president of the Mu Delta Sigma Alumni chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated in Fort Myers. Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority was founded on November 12, 1922 in Indianapolis, Indiana. Our goal is to enhance the quality of life within the community through public service, leadership development, and through the education of our youth. We have over 85,000 members all over the world, including Bahamas, Bermuda, Canada, Germany, Korea, and most recently we chartered a chapter in Dubai. It is widely suspected that there are two different playbooks for how law enforcement officers apply the law, and it is largely based upon the racial demographic of the neighborhoods. To be specific, there is a clear delineation between the way police officers handle community policing in Black neighborhoods and when officers decide to deploy de-escalation tactics versus when to escalate to the use of deadly force. We believe the differences in approach have been stark and have steadily increased within the last 2 to 5 years. My question is, as mayor, how do you plan to work on repairing community trust, and what is your strategy for addressing this perception within our community?
And we'll start with Ms. McMiller.
Well, I think the first thing is trauma-informed care and trauma-informed approach, and actually being able to train this, but not only train it, ensure that the officers are utilizing the skills that they're learning from that particular training and utilizing it in the field. We also have to hold law enforcement accountable. We have a citizens review board right now that has no teeth. They have no teeth, they have no authority. So if there is no oversight to these law enforcement officers and some of the things that they do, and some of the atrocities that happen, things will run amok. And that's actually what's happening across the United States, but also in the city of Fort Myers. Many of our most recognized citizens, Deion Sanders, Tommy Watkins, Nate Allen, even myself, have been targeted specifically because of the color of our skin. We need to have oversight that will be able to, where someone can come up and say, we need to address this. If there is no oversight, there is no rule. If the military can have military oversight, I know good and well the city Fort Myers Police Department can have that oversight as well. So we need to make amends with the people in the city. We need to rebuild that trust, and it can be done easily from the time that they step out of the car. Yes, sir. What's happening? How are you doing? At least showing some kind of concern and treating this person not only as a man or as a woman, but as a human being. And we can start there. And once we start there, everything else will fall into place. But it starts with respect and mutual respect.
And Council Member Anderson.
Thank you. I do agree with Jacquelyn that it does start with mutual respect, and that means respect coming from both sides. I do, however, disagree with the fact that I do not believe that Blacks are being targeted or hunted. Do we have an issue in this country with police community relations, especially in the minority communities? Absolutely. But again, that revolves around, it's more of a crime issue than it is a black and white issue. The police have contact with over 375 million people a year. And while the number of incidents are horrible, they're very low compared to the number of contacts. That doesn't dismiss the importance of trying to create better police community relations. We are fortunate that we do have an agency that it does have the Police Citizen Review Board. Do I wish it had a little bit more teeth to it? Absolutely. Have I met with police leadership to discuss this? Yes, I have. Am I pushing to get it? Absolutely, and I will continue to push for it. We also have a newly created position of an inspector general who is an attorney and a former FBI agent. And his job is to review the policies of the police department to make sure they are in line with the standards and they're being followed and they're appropriate. And he also reviews the internal affairs investigations. Every complaint that's made against an officer is investigated. His job is to then review those to make sure that investigation was done properly. What we have to realize is that all citizens, regardless of your employment, you are entitled to due process. And that applies to the police officers as well. Sometimes that does make it challenging to hold an officer accountable. But I can tell you from my experience on the police department, the accountability is there. Can it be greater? Yes. Am I for greater accountability? Absolutely. And I tell the officers all the time, the best thing I can do to support the police department is to hold them accountable.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you both for your responses. Moving on to the issue of police policy reform. Some law enforcement agencies in the United States in the 21st century began to emphasize de-escalation as a method of conflict resolution and obtaining voluntary compliance. There is also an emphasis on community policing to build relationships and community trust. Nonetheless, instances of misconduct, and brutality have continued to occur across the U.S. The next question is from Todd Thomas of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Brother Stephen. When I actually attended the meet and greet session when Police Chief Derek Diggs came into town and the interview process was going on for the job for the Fort Myers Police Department chief. One of the things he mentioned was he would use qualitative analysis as a part of the increased focus on crime in Fort Myers. And that's just basically using studies and mathematical data to look into areas of crime and basically root out some of those factors. What this has resulted in, not necessarily here, but in other areas, it's resulted in what many minority citizens believe is an increase in the number of police officers harassing formerly incarcerated citizens trying to reintegrate into society. Here's my question, two-part. What strategy do you plan to lead that will improve the Fort Myers Police Department's community policing practices? Part two, how will you personally monitor those situations to ensure that those officers are serving and protecting while at the same time allowing our citizens to be productive while they reintegrate?
And this will first start with Councilman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. It's good to see you.
Yes, sir.
As a member of the police department, I introduced the Citizens Police Academy and the Citizens on Patrol. Those were both programs geared toward getting the community and the police involved with each other, helping the citizens understand the ins and outs of the police department. I'm currently working with the city manager and the police department post the rules and regulations on the website, so they are available to people. Right now, if you want a copy of it, you have to do a public records request, and then you have to pay for the cost of that. I'm advocating and working on getting them posted so you can just go right online and find them out. This year, the Fort Myers Police Department received the advanced accreditation from the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. Less than 5% of the police agencies in this country hold that accreditation. Part of that deals with police community relations. Community policing is a very effective way to police in the neighborhood. We're fortunate that we have invested in a lot of technology to help the police department with the spot shotter, the license plate readers, and all of that. We have experienced a 40% plus reduction in violent crime in this city. Let's understand, where was that violent crime? In the very neighborhoods that you protected, the very neighborhoods that we are worried about the value of, or the survival of those neighborhoods and the ability for people to live there safely and invest in those neighborhoods. Thank you.
And Ms. McMiller.
Without a doubt, Shots Fired has helped with identifying and addressing some of the crime that's been within the neighborhood. But the Shots Fired has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with community policing. Community policing is law enforcement building a rapport and building a relationship with the community that they patrol. And we need to be very clear with that. Unless your community will trust you and trust that they can come to you in a time of need without being persecuted, your community police patrols, all of these other programs that you have, you're not actually addressing the core issues. You're putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound, and it is not happening, and it's not going to work. What we need to do is refunding, going in, demilitarizing law enforcement. We are not again in Afghanistan. We can utilize those funds to put more into programs like Cahoots. This is a program, and we already know law enforcement, they're stretched thin. We want law enforcement officers, which are fathers, their children. My son is going into law enforcement. We want them to come home safely, but they're stretched very thin. Let them focus on trying to keep us safe and building a relationship with the community by focusing on that trauma-informed care. It teaches them how to communicate with the community that they are living in, but also that they're sworn to protect, but also utilizing programs like Cahoots. They will actually go out in cases where it doesn't need a law enforcement officer, mental health crisis, situations like that. They have EMTs and nurses and mental health counselors that will respond to that. They can handle that, and let law enforcement be law enforcement officers that will patrol the community and also provide that community policing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. McMiller. Staying on this topic, we have a second question submitted by both the Lee County Republican Party and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. Asking this question will be Jerry Ware of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. Ms. Ware?
By 22 women. Locally, we were established here at Fort Myers. Yes.
Ms. Ware,
Yes.
I had to unmute you. This is Brother Hunter. I unmuted you and you had already started talking, so start.
Okay. Ready? Okay. I'm Jerry Ware, as I said before, a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, which was founded January 1913 by 22 collegiate women at Howard University. Delta Sigma Theta has 300,000 women that have joined this organization. I, for one, joined Delta Sigma Theta 1965 at Beta Alpha in Tallahassee, Florida. Locally, we began our chapter here in 1965, starting the first Greek organization here locally. The question that I have been given to ask you is, as mayor, how will you, hold on 1 minute. Technology has this failure, doesn't it? How come? Tell me what disappeared. Steve, can you read my question for me?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much, Ms. Ware. As mayor, how will you address Fort Myer Police Department's strategies for comprehensive police reform, considering that there may be revisions to the police department's budget? And we'll start with Ms. McMiller.
Well, one of the things we're going to, I think we all need to have a seat at the table. But not only that, I think someone from the Citizens Review Board, a representative of the community, needs to be there from each one of the wards in the city. Not only, to actually have input into doing that. The funding, refunding, and the with law enforcement, we want to continue to ensure that they are safe. One of the things that I would expect that they would do is ensure, add one of the policies where they will require another mental health evaluation, either on an annual basis or at least every 2 years, to ensure that law enforcement officers are remaining mentally safe so they can do their job properly and move forward with keeping everyone safe in the area, in the community that they're going to be serving. But we also have to look at the fact that law enforcement, the police department takes about 42% of our budget within the city. And there's much to be done, much changes that need to be done. And again, I will go back to demilitarizing. There's a lot of trainings that is unneeded, but there's also, that's not needed, but there's a lot of trainings that are needed, again, like the trauma-informed care. I spoke to Chief Diggs a few years ago regarding this, and this is something that they are specifically requiring at many police departments and sheriff departments to have this particular training where they can identify with the community, they can approach the community that they're serving in a trauma-informed manner.
Thank you very much. Councilman Anderson.
Thank you, Mrs. Ware, for your question. One of the things that I relish the most about my career with the police department, my 24-year career, when I was a major, I mandated a program that every supervisor, from sergeant all the way up to the chief, including myself, an entire day, cell phones put aside, no interruptions. And it was a program called Healing Fractured Communities. And it was focused on helping officers understand the impact that their actions have, especially in the minority communities. I think that's something that was very worthwhile. It was a good investment, and I would like to see that again, and I will definitely work on that. Another thing I will do is start a outreach program where, as a council person, I have monthly ward meetings. It was in person, now it's by Zoom. I will set up an outreach program where I meet with people from the community on a regular basis to hear their input on a variety of issues. But let's make sure we all understand, when it comes to the Fort Myers Department, we were only one of 11 agencies in this state to go with a citizen police review board. All right, that was cutting edge back there. We were one of the first agencies in the state to go to body cameras, which is another great tool. Like I said, we started the Inspector General's position. We also got the advanced accreditation from CALEA. And in February, mind you, before these things started to really hit the news, I know they've been going on for years, but before things really went south, Chief Diggs implemented several reforms, including a use of force continuum, a banning of chokeholds, the use of de-escalation techniques, the duty to exhaust all means before shooting, warnings before shooting, the duty for officers to intervene when another officer is not.
Your time has expired.
Okay.
Sir. Thank you very much, Councilman Anderson. We planned on a couple more questions, but because of time, we're going to move directly now to the closing statements. You will have 2 minutes each, and we're going to start with, since we began the night with Councilman Anderson, we'll start the closing statements with Ms. McMiller. 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for having me. This has been a very enlightening experience because I want to say this. It really makes me realize how the city got into the condition that it is. If you don't recognize a problem, it will continue to grow. And this is what's been happening. We see what's happening, but certain areas and certain people of our community, leaders within our community, just don't get it. They don't get what's actually been bothering us as a community itself. I've been a former business owner and I know how to manage. I've been an advocate for Lee County and an advocate for the city of Fort Myers. So therefore I care about my neighbors. I've lived here, grown up here, graduated from here, but I've also learned and loved the people that have been here as well. And I'm a single mom. I understand the challenges as a single mother, business owner, CEO, but also someone that's trying to raise their children in a community that I'm afraid every time my two boys walk outside of the door. I'm afraid when I walk outside of the door. People do not understand trauma, and our city leaders need to start to understand that. When something happens to us, we carry it for the rest of our lives. So to say that we're going to train our police department, we are one step away from being another Minneapolis. And if we don't understand it and we don't see it, it will happen. Now, I've lived these experiences. I haven't volunteered one day and say, I've been a garbage man. I've been out there. I've worked with people. I've worked with the homeless. This is something I've been doing for several years. So I didn't read about this. I've lived every step, being targeted, being a mother, being a single mom, owning a corporation, and also being responsible for over 50 people, their lives in my hand, knowing and understanding how to balance that work-life balance. So I'm here as a mayor, running for mayor because the city of Fort Myers they're in need of a new direction, and I'm here to take them in that new direction to prosper. I'm Jacquelyn McMiller, and I would love to have your vote for mayor of the city of Fort Myers.
Thank you very much, Ms. McMiller. Councilman Anderson, your closing statement, you have 2 minutes.
All right, is that better?
Yes.
All right. You know, President Lyndon Johnson said, when the burdens of the presidency seem unusually heavy, I always remind myself that it could be worse. I could be a mayor. You know, being a mayor is a tough job, and Fort Myers is facing tough times. Tough times due to COVID-19, tough times due to civil unrest, tough times with homelessness and affordable housing, tough times with balancing new growth with maintaining existing neighborhoods, and tough times with a changing economy. Tough times require experienced leadership. Tough times require leadership that will engage in tough conversations, no matter how uncomfortable they may be. Tough times require leadership that puts the public interest over the party agendas. In tough time, experience matters. I have the experience this city needs at the time it's most needed. I believe that my decades of commitment and service, coupled with my extensive experience, surpasses my opponent's unproven concepts. I am the choice for the experienced leadership that is needed to keep Fort Myers moving forward in a positive way by continuous improvement of public safety services, lowering our taxes and increasing our reserves, revitalizing our neighborhoods, especially those that are most underserved, addressing housing issues, reducing homelessness, and promoting economic development. Throughout my adult life, I have demonstrated and committed to and love for this community, not just by serving in paid positions, but by volunteering and support numerous nonprofit and social service organizations on the state, local, county level. I've had 2 gubernatorial appointments, one to the Children's Services Council and the other to the State of Florida Juvenile Justice Standards and Training Commission. I'm the candidate who has the experience and leadership to guide Fort Myers through the good times as well as the tough times. I want to thank you, the Kappa Alpha Psi. Thank you for hosting this evening's event. Thanks to those of you who took the time to view the program. Please vote for experience, vote for your future, and vote for Kevin Anderson for mayor. Thank you.
I want to thank both of you, Councilman Anderson and Ms. McMiller. I want to thank you for taking the opportunity out of your tremendously busy schedules to join us tonight. And thanks to the fraternities and sororities of the Divine Nine for participating at this mayoral candidate forum. We're going to move to, I think, a very exciting segment. I'd like to introduce Curtis Dennison, who will take us through a voter registration segment, followed by our U.S. Congressional District 19 Candidates Forum. Brother Dennison?
Thank you, Brother Love. Again, my name is Curtis Dennison, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about voter registration, the criteria you need to do in order to meet in order to vote, as well as if you're a felon, how you can have your rights restored. Next slide, please. Here in Florida, we have well over 4 million unregistered eligible voters that haven't yet registered to vote. In Florida in 2020, it is considered going to be a close presidential race. It is imperative that if you want your interest backed, or if you want your interest in ideas to be represented, for you to take your chance and go ahead and vote. In 2018, Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis won their respective races by less than half a point, and President Trump won by 2 points. So again, it's imperative, if you want your interests represented, to go out there and register and vote. In order to register, you must meet the following criteria: be a citizen of the United States of America, be a Florida resident, be at least 18 years old, not been found mentally incapacitated with respect to voting in Florida, not have been convicted of a felony, or if you have been convicted of a felony, meet the criteria listed in Amendment 4 of the Florida Constitution in order to have your rights restored. Next slide, please. A felony conviction in Florida for murder or sexual offense does make you ineligible to vote in Florida unless your right to vote is restored by the State Clemency Board. Any other felony conviction in Florida, you are able to have your register restored by completing all terms of your sentence. That includes your prisoner jail time, parole, probation, or other forms of supervision, and payment of all fines, fees, costs, and restitution. Next slide, please. Now, if you have a felony conviction in another state, that doesn't necessarily preclude you from being able to vote here in Florida, unless your conviction in that particular state stops you from voting. Then you won't be able to vote here in Florida. A felony, if you just have a felony offense but not adjudicated guilty, that does not make you ineligible to vote. You still can vote. If you only have a misdemeanor conviction, that does not make you ineligible to vote. You still have the right to vote. Now, if you're interested in registering, you can register by many different ways, either online at registertovoteflorida.gov, or visiting the Florida Driver's License Office or Tax Collector's Office, or you can fill out the voting registration application in person or by mail and deliver it to the Division of Elections. Now, the National Voter Registration Act has designated government agencies to serve as voting registration agencies. This means any person can register to vote through one of these agencies at the same time they receive the agency's core services. So that means you can register to vote when you visit the office that provide public assistance, offices that provide state-funded programs for persons with disabilities, armed forces recruitment offices, centers for independent living, and public libraries are all places where you can vote. Now, if you believe you're registered but you're not quite sure, you can check your registration status by visiting the Division of Voters Election Information Lookup, or you can contact the Bureau of Voter Registration Services hotline at 1-866-308-6739, or send them an email. Next slide, please. Now, the register to vote in this year's presidential election is Monday, October 5th, 2020. If you're planning to send your application by mail, it must be postmarked by that date. Now, there is a late registration deadline, and it only applies to those who have been recently separated from the Merchant Marines, Armed Forces, or from employment outside the United States. That late registration deadline is 5 p.m. on the Friday before Election Day in the county in which you are to be registered. For more information, contact your supervisor of elections. Here is a brief snapshot of the voting registration application. This is what it looks like. You'll just need to fill out the application and that information and then send it into the Division of Electors. Thank you. Next slide. Now, these are two frequently asked questions that I've heard. I just moved within Florida. Is there anything I need to do about my voter registration? Now, if you move from one county in Florida to another county or move within the county, you do not need to re-register. However, you will need to update the address on your voter registration record. Now, if you haven't received your voter information card after you registered, you'll need to contact your county supervisor of elections office. You'll want to give them approximately 2 weeks following registration. But again, if you haven't received it, contact your county supervisor of elections office. Next slide. Kappa Alpha Psi, along with our Divine Nine brothers and sisters, have partnered with the National Bar Association in their nonpartisan election protection efforts. Other partners in this effort include the Lawyer Committees for the Civil Rights and the Transformative Justice Coalition. This is a short-term commitment that ends after Election Day on November 3rd, 2020. Now, up top, you will see the Voter Protection Hotline. If you feel as though your voting rights have been infringed upon when you go to vote, there's two different hotlines, English speaking and Spanish speaking. Please take a picture of this particular slide so you can have it handy just in case you meet, if you feel, the chance happens where your voter rights are infringed upon. Next slide, please. I would like to leave you with this. Regardless of your party affiliation, it's imperative that if you're not registered, to go out there and register and vote. Your vote is your voice. Thank you.
Okay, Brother Dozier, we can see your lips moving, but we can't hear you. Okay, I think he was going to say thank you to Mr. Anderson and to Ms. McMiller for joining us, and to thank Brother Sheard, Brother Dennison, I'm sorry, for his presentation on voting rights in Florida. Now, Dr. Banyai and Representative Donalds have joined us. I see Dr. Banyai there with a big smile. And I don't see Mr. Donalds, but I see that he is connected. And Mr. Donalds, it appears that you might have a slow connection speed. You might want to get a little closer to your Wi-Fi router. Let's take a quick 1-minute break so Brother Dozier can reconnect his other device and cure his technical issue. And I see Mr. Donalds trying to sign back in. So let's take a quick, Brother Love, if you can keep time for us, just take a quick 60-second break while we make those adjustments.
Yes, I would.
Okay, we are reconnected and we are live.
Good evening. Welcome to the Fort Myers Alumni Chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated's Virtual Candidate Forum. It is with great pleasure I welcome you to our Virtual Candidates Town Hall Forum. Tonight is very special because you'll be hearing from our local civic leaders and our local political candidates. Our goal for this evening is to educate the voters about the unique concerns facing the Black community living here in Southwest Florida. And most importantly, we want to get to know our local candidates. On behalf of the over 170,000 men of Kappa Alpha Psi presiding worldwide and the local Fort Myers Alumni Chapter, we invite you to exercise your personal responsibility to vote and to listen intentionally to the civics leaders represented here tonight. This is the second half of our two-part forum. Our moderators for this evening are Brother David Shaw and Brother Stephen Love. Both of these gentlemen have had the distinguished honor of serving our community as members of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated for over 50 years. The next voice you will hear will be Pastor Ken Burns, who will be providing our opening invocation, followed by Brother Tony Allen, the Vice Polemarch for Fort Myers Alumni Chapter, who will then explain the guidelines for tonight's virtual town hall forum.
Good evening, everyone. Let's take a moment to pray. Gracious Lord, our Father, we come before your throne of grace to ask you humbly to be with us as we participate in this forum for informational purposes to help us to dissect and understand the candidates that you place before us. We ask, Father, that you heal our nation and that you create in us clean hearts and renew right spirits within us. We ask that you allow us to do this forum decent and in order, and that you order our steps as we move forward. We ask now, Father, for your presence here, and that you be kind to us, that we will have a discerning spirit to dissect the information that's given to us, that is utilized to help build communities and relationships as we move forward. We thank you now for this opportunity. We ask for your presence here, and it's in your Son, Jesus' name, that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Good evening, everyone. My task tonight is to offer rules for the forum for our candidates this evening. First of all, each candidate will be asked 9 questions. The moderator is responsible for introducing each co-host. Each co-host will have no more than 1 minute to introduce their organization and pose the prepared question. Each candidate will be limited to 2 minutes to answer each question. The moderator is responsible for providing a nonverbal 30-second cue to the candidates when time is running out. The moderator is responsible for maintaining strict guidelines. And our moderator this evening is Brother David Shaw.
Thank you, Brother Allen. And again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kappa Alpha Psi Virtual Candidates Forum for the Office of U.S. Representative for Florida's 19th Congressional District. I would like to introduce to our viewers this evening our 2 candidates. First, Banyai, and next, Florida State Representative Byron Donalds. Candidates, we have panelists with us this evening who will be asking questions of you. After a panelist asks his or her question, you will have 2 minutes to answer. When 30 seconds remain of your answer, you will see me hold a red card alerting you to the fact that you have 30 seconds remaining. At the end of the 2-minute period, I will again put the card up and alert you to the fact that your time has expired. The candidates, as introduced, will be answering questions one at a time from a panel of African-American fraternities and sororities, also known as the Divine Nine. I would like to introduce those individuals. With us this evening is Todd Thomas of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity, Asante Boyd of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority, Jerry Ware of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Kurt Sherd of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Willie Sparrow of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Tony Allen of Kappa Alpha Psi, Alan Stockton of Life as well as Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, and Isaac Dozier of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity. Our topics this evening will cover the areas of voting rights, COVID-19 preparation, policing policies, federal police and federal law enforcement, and lastly, allocating federal funds to Southwest Florida. Having covered that, if everyone is ready, we will begin with our first question. Our candidates have been informed as to the fact that we will alternate who goes first. So the person that will go first, the first question, will go second on the second question. And keeping with the old protocol of ladies first, we'd like to begin, if we could, with Dr. Cindy Banyai. The first question deals with the issue of voting rights, which has been hotly contested throughout the history of our country. Our first question on the subject of voting rights is from Mr. Todd Thomas of Phi Beta Sigma. Mr. Thomas, the floor is yours to ask the question. Mr. Thomas, and you will unmute.
Oops, my apologies.
Yeah, start over, sir.
All righty. I want to say, first of all, thank you to Dr. Banyai and Representative Donalds for participating. That's much appreciated. I represent Phi Beta Sigma fraternity, a group of conscious men, college-educated men representing over 600 chapters around the world and 130,000 plus members. And we practice the tenets of brotherhood, scholarship, and service. I'll start with this. Although the state of Florida was given very high marks, the current White House administration has declared that voting by mail is corrupt and cheating will be rampant. However, and I'm only using some local Lee County statistics from our recent primary election on August 18th, it demonstrated that voting by mail was a preferred method to cast a local vote, with over 110,000 mail-in ballots versus 27,000 in-person votes that were cast. So here's my question. What's your strategy moving forward should you be elected to assist in ensuring that the Southwest Florida voting systems within Congressional District 19 are safe and voters' rights are protected?
Yes, thank you so much for this question. And I think it's a really timely and important question, given that we are both in a election year as well as in the middle of a pandemic still. And that is one of the reasons why vote by mail had been so popular here in the primary election. Now, luckily for us here in the state of Florida, we have been doing vote by mail for a long time, and it's been done very well. And this is a testament to the system that we have, as well as the professionalism of our local supervisors of elections, whom themselves are also elected officials. I think that we have a safe and secure system here in Florida when it comes to vote by mail. The votes were counted professionally. We got the results right away, and I was very impressed with how things went this primary season. When I think about moving forward, I know that this is a good way to increase voter turnout and make sure that all Americans have the ability to express themselves through their right to vote. It is important that we keep that available to people and that we make sure that as many people as possible have access to vote, and there is a reduction of barriers overall. Barriers are what keep people from being able to vote. And we know that people in our community who are vulnerable, who have jobs that prevent them from being able to easily get to the poll on voting day. And now in the middle of this pandemic, when people have situations, if they're older, if they have immune problems, they're going to be less likely to want to go to the poll in the middle of a pandemic. So we need to make sure that we're working to ensure that these votes are heard. And from a federal level, I would like to ensure that we have enough capacity and funding going to those state and local elections commissions to ensure that they have the highest level of technology, the right amount of staff, that they can pay poll workers, and to keep everything going, because public investment in public good, specifically around something as important as voting, is important to me.
Time is expired. Thank you very much, Dr. And now, State Representative Donalds, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. First of all, to the Fort Myers chapter, Kappa Psi, to the other members of the Divine. Oh, I think I got some feedback. Let me mute myself. I'll probably take care of that. First of all, I want to thank you so much for the opportunity. First thing I'll say is Florida is actually a model in voting by mail or absentee voting. Like my opponent said, we've been doing this for more than 20 years in our state. Frankly, we have the best rules in the country with respect to it. And I think we also have the best supervisors of elections, especially here in Southwest Florida. They both do a tremendous job. They make sure that the votes are counted accurately. Our canvassing boards do a tremendous job as well of making sure that everybody's vote is actually counted. And even what we just did in the legislative session, my last legislative session in Tallahassee, is we actually took additional steps to make sure that everybody's vote could be counted. What do I mean by that? The first thing is that we wanted to make sure that if signatures didn't match on your ballot, that there was an opportunity to cure that signature. That is something that our supervisors of elections are doing actively, not only during the primary that just happened on August 18th, but they're doing it again. They're going to be doing it in our presidential election this fall. I think the issue we're having with respect to absentee voting or vote by mail in our state, the state of Florida, versus what's happening in other states, is that many other states are not equipped. They have not really done they have not really run through an election with the magnitude of absentee ballots that are being requested in other states. There are serious concerns about whether their supervisor of elections in the various states will have the capacity to make sure that these votes can be counted in an effective manner, in an effective time period. And I think that's really what's causing the issue. But I will tell you right now, in the state of Florida, because we've been through this for 20 years, we actually have great experience in doing this. And our election system here in November is actually going to move pretty flawlessly. I think going forward, the thing we do to ensure that that maintains itself is making sure that our supervisors of elections are getting the support they need from the federal level, whatever that may be, but also that they continue to have a great relationship with the state legislature in Tallahassee. As a state representative currently, I can tell you that we've always had open dialogue with them, no matter what county they come from, to ensure that all votes are counted.
Ms. Boyd, the floor is yours to ask the question.
Brother Shaw, before on mute, I unmuted you, so you have to start over.
Okay, the second question, emphasizing the importance of voting, will be asked by Ms. Asante Boyd of Sigma Gamma Rho. And we will begin with, if we could, with Representative Donalds after the question is asked. Asante, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. According to recent polling, 58% of the eligible voters agree that the U.S. Constitution should be amended so that the U.S. president is decided by which candidate receives the most individual votes, while 40% prefer the current Electoral College voting method. My question is, what is your preferred method and why?
Representative Donalds, please.
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. My preferred method is that we actually continue with the Electoral College. It's one thing that we have to understand about when it comes to selecting a president to represent the entire country. If we go through a popular vote method, what would actually happen is that voters in Los Angeles, New York City, my former home city, Miami, Chicago, etc., would actually be the ones who would be picking who would represent our country with respect to foreign relations and being the commander of chief in our country. The reason we have an electoral college system is actually to protect smaller states in the federal republic that we have, which is the United States of America. The electoral college system, what it truly does, it makes sure that all states matter with respect to electing a president, not just the largest states in our country. If we went under a popular vote system, essentially, like I said, the larger states in our country, which are our state, Texas, California, and New York, will basically be deciding who is president of the United States for the other 46 states in our union. I don't believe that's appropriate. Really, if you look at the entire framework of our Constitution, its purpose is actually to protect the minority from the will of the majority. And so I think that's the purpose of our electoral college system. It is probably the most perfect system. There's no such thing as a perfect system because people aren't perfect. But what we want to be able to do is make sure that all votes matter. And if you switch to a popular vote election, what actually is going to happen, what it's really going to mean, is that people who vote in Georgia, people who vote in North Carolina, in Tennessee, in Montana, in Idaho, people in Ohio is a battleground state today, in part because of the electoral college system. And I think if you went to a popular vote system, those votes would not matter as much. And I think that would be to the detriment of the country.
Shall I just start in? It looks like Mr. Shaw may be talking.
Brother Shaw, you have to, please start over.
Okay, all right. Dr. Banyai, if you would address that question, please.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So thank you so much. This is a really important question, again, as we are looking into an election right now. I think that the popular vote is important. I think that every single American deserves a vote. I think that most Americans think that's the way that it works. They don't necessarily even realize that we have this whole other set of electors that meet in December who actually pick who the president is. And that it depends on the state whether or not their voice actually matters. And so right now, I'm a little bit worried about what may happen because we heard Donald Trump this week say that he is not committing to a peaceful transition process and that Republicans across the country have started to look into ways that they could subvert the popular vote. And that includes making sure that the state legislature has the ability to pick Trump electors for the Electoral College and make sure that he gets in no matter what the rest of America says. That scares me to death. And I do not think that we need this system. That system of Electoral College was brought about because the southern states wanted to have just as much power as the northern states, despite the fact that they didn't really want to count a large portion of their population whom they enslaved. Just the way that they set up the Senate to help balance out that power. It's not right. It wasn't right then, and it's not right now. The Electoral College was also helping to limit the amount of voice that every other type of person who is not a land-owning elite, white male in this country. I think it's high time that we move forward and enact a popular vote like we do for so many other parts of our elections and our elected officials around this country. Our votes matter. We spend a lot of time and a lot of money making sure that people get to the voting box, and it matters. And it's time that we have our law and the way that we elect our president to match that effort. I am not in favor of continuing with the Electoral College. Let's move towards a popular vote for the president.
Thank you very much. Time has expired. Appreciate that. Now let's move to question number 3, our third question. The emergence of COVID-19 pandemic has immersed society in a scenario not witnessed since the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. Every aspect of our lifestyle has been impacted, not the least of which is healthcare. Our next panel discussion is on the topic of COVID-19 preparation and healthcare, and is from Ms. Jerry Ware of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Ms. Ware, the floor is yours for a question.
Good afternoon. First, I would like to thank Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated on behalf of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated locally on the national level for allowing us to participate in this panel. Social action was the founding of Delta Sigma Theta over 200 years ago. And to my question, although there are deficiencies in both the American Health Care Act, introduced on March 20, 2017, and the Affordable Care Act of 2010, nonpartisan think tanks have predicted that while the ACA taxed the richest 5%, it has facilitated a drop in uninsured, that is 18 to 64 age group, from 52.3% in 2010 to 12.4% in 2016. The AHCA, introduced in 2017, would repeal taxes on the top 5% of high-income earners and take away the fees associated with not enrolling in the Affordable Care Act of 2010. Moreover, the 2017 American Care Act is projected to have 49 million uninsured people versus current 28 million uninsured under the current law. The question is, what is your opposition on health care? That's number one. And number two, do you favor the Affordable Care Act of 2010, the American Health Care Act proposed in 2017, or another hybrid of the two?
And Dr. Byron, we'll begin with you on this one, please.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this question. You know, healthcare is something that's near and dear to me. It's one of my top issues. It's also very personal for me. Having a critically ill daughter for the first 2 years of her life really demonstrated to me the meaning of having access to care. The ACA is also known as Obamacare. It saved her life. If we didn't have it, I am 100% sure that we would not have gotten the health care that she needed to save her life when she had a rare blood disease. When I think about some of the issues, I know that there are a lot of people who still don't have access to care because of the costs. But the Obamacare, the ACA, did actually reduce those or make it more accessible to a lot of people. That mandate part was actually put in there at the behest of insurance companies being told and led by Republicans so that they could continue to have the profit to spread out the risk more specifically across the people in the United States. But what I would like to see is not only just preserving what we have in the ACA right now, because we are at risk of actually having the pre-existing conditions come back and be a thing coming up here very shortly. And we need to make sure that pre-existing conditions remain gone forever. So we need to first and foremost protect what we have right now. Second, we need to move towards a universal healthcare system that will provide affordable access to care for everyone. And this means that we have availability for everybody to be able to buy into a government program that provides a sliding scale user fee and cost cutting from the central government down, but it has local implementation. There are models like this around the world that work and make it a lot easier for people to get the health care they need to survive. It's extremely important in a system like ours, where one of the biggest issues we have with COVID and during the pandemic is the health discrepancies that have been laid bare. When you see that Black people in the United States are getting COVID at 2.6 times as much as white people, and they are dying at 2.1 times as much. Access to care is more important now than it ever has been.
I assume that's me, so I'll go ahead. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Shaw. One thing I do want to clear up with respect to the tax provision that's in the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, Republicans did not push for that. That is not true. The reason why that was put in is because it was very clear in the economics of the Affordable Care Act that if you didn't place a tax on Americans to basically make them buy the policy, they would not buy it. One of the reasons that we're seeing that in with respect to policies in the Affordable Care Act is because deductibles have increased actually quite rapidly since its passage. Premiums have increased much higher since its passage. So if you're a family of four making $65,000 a year, your premiums and your deductibles are actually higher today than they were before the passage of the Affordable Care Act. To the question of which one do I support, actually, I don't support either model. I think what we should be doing is actually taking a step back and looking at what we really want to accomplish. And what we want to accomplish is making sure that all people, whether they use employer-provided care, or if they're a sole proprietor and they're out there by themselves, or there's somebody who really is in the gig economy and they're working 3 different jobs, can they get access to an affordable healthcare plan? That's the thing we all want to accomplish. I think the way you do that is actually using the mechanism of the exchange that the Affordable Care Act created, but you get rid of all the regulations and you get rid of all of the additional requirements that came along with the Affordable Care Act. That's the reason why deductibles have risen substantially. That's the reason why premiums have risen substantially. So if you pull that out of the system and you do one very simple thing, which is you create an association health plan type of system within the exchange. so that you actually combine 1,000 lives into a risk pool. That actually lowers the cost for everybody. It's similar to as if you worked at Wells Fargo, but now you're going into the exchange in an 1,000 life risk pool. The reason why I'm so familiar with this is because I spent 7 years of my business career in insurance. Insurance is quite simple. It's really about formulating risk pools. I think we have to be far more simpler with our approach. It would actually lower costs and lower deductibles for all Americans in the process.
Thank you very much, Representative Donalds. Now our next question, question number 4, is in regards to the same subject area and will be asked by Mr. Kurt Sherd of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity. We again will alternate and begin with State Representative Donalds, please. Mr. Sherd, the floor is yours to ask your question, sir.
Greetings, good evening. United States of America is the most powerful nation in the world, and it is the highest number of deaths per capita due to COVID-19. It is apparent that something is amiss in the overall healthcare policies and the U.S. approach to resolving this healthcare crisis. What is your strategy to address the healthcare needs of the residents living in Southwest Florida?
Listen, this is a very important question because it's really about where are we going to go now? What are we going to do going forward with respect to COVID-19? One of the things is very clear, having talked to the local hospital executives here in Southwest Florida, whether it's NCH in Collier or Lee Health in Lee County, we have the hospital capacity necessary to provide care to people who actually come down with the worst effects of COVID-19. At the beginning of this pandemic back in March, if we go back in history, the thing we were mostly concerned about as a country was would our hospital system be overwhelmed? And so that's what caused a lot of the social distancing, even the stay-at-home orders, and even the closing of non-essential businesses. But we're at a point now 6 months later, where we have far more information about COVID-19. The one thing we have to make sure we do, of course, is reopen our economy because people need to get back to work. Businesses need to reopen. The second thing we also understand is people who have major health issues are far more susceptible to the worst parts of COVID-19. The third thing we have to understand is that if you fall into those health characteristics, you're plus 65, you have other health issues. It is important that, number one, you guard your health appropriately. Number two, the question is there hospital capacity and is there capacity with local medical professionals to get the help you need if you take on the worst aspects of COVID-19? What is going on right now in our state, especially Southwest Florida, is that healthcare capacity exists. It is there. It is real. And so I think it's important that we remember that as we talk about what's coming next. With respect to the amount of people who have passed away, the 204,000 people now who have passed away from COVID-19, it definitely is a tragedy in our country. But we have to understand we were dealing with a virus we knew very little about. It hit us very, very abruptly. The thing now is, what are we going to do forward? And I think we have the healthcare capacity in Southwest Florida for people to get the healthcare that we need. That's not from me, that's from local health officials.
Thank you very much, Representative Donalds. Dr. Banyai, please, same question.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a very timely question, and I answered some of it, talked a little bit about it in the general healthcare question we just answered. One of the big things that we see here is that there are major health discrepancies that COVID is laying bare. Hospitalizations, Black people who get COVID, 4.7 times as likely to be in the hospital. They happen to be a population that also has less access to healthcare and health insurance overall. This is a real problem for us. So this is one of the reasons why I've come to advocating for universal healthcare. This is a big thing that we need to tackle in the long run. Immediately, yes, you know what? We do have hospital capacity right now. We got a heck of a lot of ventilators because Trump and DeSantis are like this. Now, there are states that needed them, but we got them. In fact, we got more ventilators than beds and staff. So you can have a ventilator out in the parking lot of the hospital. Here's one of the other things that we have that's a problem with our healthcare system in Southwest Florida. We have major issues with our workforce. We have a continuous amount of a gap in terms of hiring for nurses. We do not have enough general practitioners. We do not have enough specialists. So even if you get sick in any way, shape, or form, it could be months before you see the appropriate specialist. So what I'm looking at is ensuring not only do we have appropriate healthcare access to preventative care, we are appropriately addressing healthcare discrepancies between different types of people in the system, because we're acknowledging that, we're tracking it, we're transparent about it, but that we're also addressing our workforce needs to make sure that we are bringing in the appropriate staff, that we're diversifying our workforce, that we have affordable housing and good schools and good transportation, because that's the reason we can't get these doctors here to help take care of us. And you know what? I love the fact that we have some really great healthcare practitioners here, but it's not going to be enough if we're not really addressing the reality of our situation and the access to care that people really need, especially during times of pandemic. So don't be fooled when you say that there's enough capacity, because trust me, you don't want to be there. Prevention is key. And by the way, we should have done the mask mandate.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, we will now move on to the next subject area of police policies and federal police and federal law enforcement. Some law enforcement agencies in the United States have emphasized de-escalation as a method of conflict resolution and obtaining voluntary compliance. Nonetheless, issues of misconduct and brutality have continued to occur across the country. The next question is for Representative Donalds, and it's from Mr. Willie Sparrow of Alpha Phi Alpha. Mr. Sparrow, please. If you will unmute your mic.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Representative Donalds and Dr. Banyai. Thank you for coming on. I represent Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. It was founded on a cold Tuesday, December 4th, 1906. We have 706 worldwide chapters and over 200,000 members. Since everybody else is throwing their numbers out there, I just make sure everybody know how 06ers roll. My question for you both tonight is dealing with the issue of reducing the funding. The issue of reducing the funding for police departments have gained mainstream attention recently. My question for you, do you both believe in defunding the police, of some police funding to other supporting services, or nothing to be done at all with the budgets? Let me ask it again. Do you believe in defunding the police, a reallocation of some police funding to other supporting services, or nothing to be done with budgets at all, dealing with budgets?
First of all, Willie, it's good seeing you. Thank you for the question. No, I don't agree with defunding police budgets. I think, as somebody who grew up in the inner city, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I think that as tragic as some of these occurrences have happened in our nation, one of the other things we have to remember is that, when you're victimized in your neighborhood, the police are the people you call, and they come and they try to take care of it as quickly as they can, as quickly as they can respond to it. By defunding police budgets, what actually happens is there are less officers on the street and response times increase. In my home city of New York City, where they already took $1 billion out of the NYPD budget, they're already starting to experience that right now. And so as somebody who grew up in the inner city, who's somebody who had to call on the police for things that happened, when I was victimized as a young kid, whether I was in the 5th grade or I was 16 years old, no, that's something I don't support. Now, with some of the other issues we're seeing in policing, whether it's the mental health issues that are occurring that our police are having to respond to, whether it's the domestic violence, the rise in domestic violence cases that our police are also having to respond to, I think it's incumbent on all states, including our state here in Florida, to start to re-examine the other budgets that are going on with respect to dealing with those type of issues. In Florida, that was something where if I was going to stay in a state legislature, we were going to begin seriously working on to increase funding for mental health. Because if you talk to law enforcement, most of the people in our county jails are actually in there because of mental health issues, not because of crime issues. And then what happens is that actually begins to metastasize where it does become a criminal issue. And so I think that's some of the places we need to start. With respect to what to do with police officers themselves, I do think there needs to be reviews and training, but I think that's something that happens with local police officials and local community members. That's something you do working together. But in terms of taking money out of police budgets directly, no, I do not support that. I think that I understand why people are advocating for that. But having grown up in an inner city myself, I will tell you what it's actually going to do is actually make it harder for law-abiding citizens in our urban corridors. We're just trying to live safely, trying to find a way to just make their lives better, trying to advocate for their kids and the like.
Thank you very much, Representative Donald. Appreciate that. Dr. Banyai, same question, please.
Absolutely. I think before I dive into talking specifically about the police reform, we need to talk about why we need police reform. Black people are incarcerated 5 times more than white people. They're 33% of the prison population compared to the 12% of the population they are. Young men of color are actually have police violence as one of the leading causes of death. 1 in 1,000 Black men can be expected to be killed by police in their lifetime. These are shocking statistics. This is why we see people rising up right now demanding change. Defund the police became the battle cry for people who were hurt and tired of being put under the thumb of people who wanted to continue to see them being oppressed. I understand. Now, I happen to be somebody who is a public administration wonk. What I would love to see is local participatory budgeting. That means community engagement from a very early on in local budgets like cities and counties to better understand the priorities and needs of a neighborhood so that those budgets can be put in the right place. And you know what? Sometimes it's going to mean more money in this area and less money in another part. But that's a total budget for a city and a locality, right? This is where people start to get mixed up about this. It's not like the money that goes to the police department is owned by them. That's owned by us. That's the people's money. And they're there to serve the people. So if there's a problem, we got to address that. And we got to make sure that money's going into the right place. So I absolutely agree that we got to look and make sure that we're funding things like mental health, but that we're also really having and crafting a truly participatory process. The other thing I want to mention is that this is a very, very local issue. Police departments are typically run by their localities, by their municipalities and their cities. You have county sheriffs and things like that. What I was worried about was
your time has terminated.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see any of the cards there.
Yes.
Oh, so my problem. So yeah, this is a local issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll pick up some of these same issues that you both have addressed in our next question. All right. Our next question, staying on the topic, will be presented by Isaac Dozier of Kappa Alpha Psi. Mr. Dozier, your question, please.
Thank you. Local records indicate that people experiencing a mental health crisis are more likely to encounter law enforcement than a medical professional. The local response efforts have been to create a crisis intervention team training and to create a crisis triage center, which has led to fewer arrests and incarceration. The question is, do you support federal programs and expenditure to initiate and augment such programs throughout Florida? Why or why not?
Dr. Banyai, if we could begin with you, this picks up on what we just discussed previously. Please continue.
Absolutely. Yes, it does. I will tell you, as somebody who worked in homeless services, I am very familiar with our dearth of mental health services here in Southwest Florida. I know that the people who are working in that space work to the best of their capacity, but we simply do not have enough. In fact, Florida ranks as one of the worst places, the lowest expenditure in mental health care around the country, and it leaves us vulnerable every single day. Just like you said in your question, it leaves people no other choice other than to call the police to get into mental health care services for their families when somebody has a crisis. Schools call the police and Baker Acts children. I was actually working with a local mental health, children's mental health initiative here. And we were talking about using the amount of Baker Acts the school has as a metric for how well they do managing the mental health in that school. Now that's a really terrible statistic to be measuring, but that's how we have to function here in Florida. So what I would propose is absolutely making sure that we have more federal dollars coming into the state to support our health services, and specifically our mental health services. The other issue that we have here, and this actually goes back to broadly our healthcare issues, is that we do not have a diversified economy. We have a donut economy with a large service sector, and then we have high-end folks who are coming, retiree CEOs and things like that. We do not have the middle section. That means that it's hard for us to get mental health practitioners in here. We do not have a robust pipeline of all the students who are graduating from FSW and FGCU to be able to do their internships here, to stay and become full-time mental health practitioners in our region. We do not have that capacity. So I'm also looking at this from a workforce diversification and education issue as well. These are things that I think we need to continue to fund and start emphasizing the issues that we really have and solving them.
Thank you, Dr. Banyai. Appreciate that. Representative Donalds, you touched on many of these same issues previously. Would you care to expound in regards to the question?
Well, listen, this is actually a very important question, and I did touch on it earlier. And I think, probably the one time in this debate, my opponent and I are actually going to agree on a lot of this. Baker acting in schools is a serious issue. This is something where my last year in the legislature, myself and Representative David Silvers out of Palm Beach County, we started working on this issue, started looking at this in far more detail, because it is a real problem. School districts are using Baker Acts far too much to address mental health concerns. Like I said before, when you talk to local law enforcement all over our state, more people in our local county jails, they are the ones they're in there and they're really mental health issues. They're not so much criminal issues, but they metastasize into criminal ones. So I do think this is something where from a federal level, we're going to have to bring in some support levels of funding to address mental health. I do think that, because it is becoming much more. It's really becoming the quiet crisis that nobody really talks about in our state. And I would also like to add that this is something where I know some of my now former colleagues in the Florida legislature, they're going to be drilling into this more and more over the next few sessions, because it's something that we clearly see is an issue. I'm glad that they're going to begin to tackle this. I think, the responsibility of the next congressman from Southwest Florida, or woman, my apologies, Dr. Banyai, is to make sure that we're supportive of what the state is doing, and we try to come in and fill those gaps around what the state is doing to make sure that we can address the issues right here at home. Mental health is a very serious problem. We need to get down to business and do what we can to fix it, and not so much fix it, but help the people who truly are in need so they can better their lives, and then try to get back to just living the best life possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will now move on to our last subject area, the allocation of federal funds to Southwest Florida. The equity of fund distribution can easily be determined through a comparative analysis, while a concept of inclusion can only be ascertained as an outcome manifested by potential or implication. Our next question is from Tony Allen of Kappa Alpha Psi. Mr. Allen, the floor is yours to pose the question, please.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Our question comes from this narrative. Water quality is important in our area. Work on some of the original Everglades restoration projects started over 20 years ago, but few have been completed because of the failure of the federal government and falling behind on the 50-50 cost sharing project. While the 2020 federal budget committed $200 million to the Everglades restoration, the state of Florida has committed around $625 million. The question: what is your opinion as to the appropriate resolution in expediting the restoration of the Everglades project?
And Dr. Banyai, we would like to begin with you, please.
Well, all funding from the federal government is up to political will. So really, up until just recently, the vast majority of people who represented Florida 19 could have cared less. They didn't really care about the people. They certainly didn't care about the environment. For most of those folks, this was a step up in the world. for them, a way to help secure their power to ensure that whatever it is that they wanted to do next in life, they had that ability. Recently, we did have Francis Rudy, who helped to secure some of that funding. And we've made progress in terms of Everglades restoration. But it really takes somebody who has the desire to protect our water and protect our environment in Congress to be able to secure those funds. And that's all there really is to it. And somebody that's willing to hold accountable the people in the state to collaborate to get those projects done as well. Our water is my top issue. I think it's important for us, not only in terms of Everglades restoration, but in terms of red tide and blue-green algae, as well as climate change mitigation, because Florida is the #1 state in the union that's going to be affected by climate change financially. So we need somebody who's going to be a champion, who's going to understand that. Now, I will tell you, and I'll let my opponent talk about his record, but his record voting on the environment has been rated F by the Florida Democratic Environmental Caucus. He has not prioritized the environment. So we really have the question in front of us is, are we ready to send somebody to Congress who is looking out for the future of their children and for everybody else in this area and understands the environmental justices issues that we face here already and wants to be a champion for the environment and understands that the funding is political will and has the political will to do so? Or are you going to send somebody who's interested in greenwashing and telling you that everything is okay and telling you that the money is coming and not getting things done?
Time is expired. Thank you. Representative Donalds, same question, please.
Thank you for the question. First, let me say it's not a surprise to me that the Florida Democratic Environmental Caucus gave me an F because I'm a Republican. I'm quite sure they don't agree with many of the things that I've advocated for. But let me tell you what I've actually done in my time in the Florida legislature. The first is during my time, there has been more than $2 billion in the state's budget that has gone directly towards Everglades restoration. My first 2 years, it was roughly $300 to $400 million, about $200 million each year. And in my last 2 years, under the leadership of the current governor, it's been more than $650 million, each year. My commitment, the #1 thing I want to do for Southwest Florida is make sure that we fund our water projects. They're essential not just to Southwest Florida, but really all of South Florida. The Lake Okeechobee flowway system, the issue is that it actually works like it was intended to work. The problem is nobody ever foresaw that 15 million people would live south of the I-4 corridor. And so what is going to be necessary is that we have consistent funding at the federal level and at the state level. In Tallahassee, I know my former colleagues are committed to continuing the funding, and they're going to do that. In Washington, now we have to continue the funding that Kirk Clausen, who represented this area, started advocating for during his time, and Francis Rooney has advocated for during his time as congressman of our area. The one thing I would also like to point out is that we have had a failure in leadership with respect to fixing the Everglades on both sides of the political aisle. Bill Clinton didn't fund it. George W. Bush didn't fund it. President Obama didn't fund it. So we've been bipartisan in that. And so what we have to be able to do is be consistent going forward about cleaning up the Everglades, but it doesn't stop there. It's also brownfields that do exist in Fort Myers. It's also making sure that we do what we can to fix, to help our local communities actually fix their water treatment plants and update them, because many of our local municipalities are dumping raw sewage into our waterways. Nobody really talks about it, but that's what's happening. And so those are the things we have to be serious about doing. I don't get into grades. I'm into results. And if you look at my record, it's always been clear that the money has come to fix those things. And in Washington, I'll be advocating for the same thing. And I will also add, I was in Washington a few days ago. I was talking with Leader McCarthy, and that was some of the subject matter that I talked about directly with him as well.
Representative Donalds, thank you very much for that response. Our second question in this subject area is from Alan Stockton of Life and Kappa Alpha Psi. And I don't think Mr. Stockton is with us. Mr. Allen, Brother Allen, Tony Allen, would you please read that question?
Brother Shaw.
Yes.
Brother Stockton, Pastor Stockton is on the line.
Oh, Pastor Stockton, my regrets. I'm sorry. If you would be so happy to, so kind, please, to address that question, I would greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Alan Stockton. I am a co-chairperson for Life, which is Lead Interfaith for Empowerment. We are an interfaith, multicultural a nonprofit organization consisting of 14 local churches in Southwest Florida. Federally funded affordable development projects that include equity and inclusion requirements like Section 3, local hiring and minority business contracting opportunities. My question is going to be in two parts. The first part, how will you advocate for bringing additional federal dollars to Southwest Florida? That's the first question. Second question, what type or types of federal construction contract reforms will you vote for to ensure that there is an equitable increase in the number of minority business enterprises obtaining federally funded construction contracts? Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And if we could begin, please, with Representative Donalds on this question.
Thank you for the question. This is actually a really good one. A couple things. Number one, when it comes to fighting for dollars to come back to Southwest Florida, I think that's something, again, if you looked at my legislative career, I represented two counties. One was Hendry County, the other is Collier County. Most of my advocacy was actually for Hendry County, because in Collier County, they probably have more tax revenue per capita than any county in the state. And so when they would ask for things, I would basically say, you have enough money, let me go advocate for Hendry County, because those are the people who really didn't have much tax revenue at all to speak of. So this is something that I think is important with respect to some of the water projects like I talked about before, but also SBA projects as well. A good friend of mine, Jerron Smith, he actually does work in the White House right now and has been one of the key architects of the Opportunity Zone program. He and I had some conversations a few months ago about ways to make that program better. Dealing with making sure that minority-owned contractors and other businesses, it was easier for them to access Opportunity Zone credits and other funding was one of those key measures. And so that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking at working with him if I'm successful in 38 days and represent the area in Southwest Florida.
Thank you very much, Representative Donalds. Dr. Banyai, please, same question.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I dive into the things that I want to do to help businesses in Southwest Florida, I just want to say that I've also done a lot of work in Hendry County. I wrote the Hendry County Community-Driven Economic Development Plan, as well as devised the grant application for the Opportunity Neighborhood grant that we actually didn't get. And these were actually during the tenure of Byron Donalds. And part of that was because there was such disinvestment by the state in that area, as well as in Immokalee, which is what we were trying to write the grant for, that most of those government agencies didn't even have the capacity to do the data analysis and reporting necessary to be able to qualify for a federal grant. So I don't know if I look at that. By the way, Hendry County has perennially had the highest unemployment rate in all of Florida for years and years and years, and continues to do so. So I'm not sure I would hold that record up high. But what I think is really important for us here in Southwest Florida is to recognize how important our small businesses are, especially considering the nature of small businesses. 91% of our economy, of our businesses in Southwest Florida are small businesses, micro businesses, in fact, with 20 employees full-time or less. And if we look at Black-owned businesses in particular, 95% of Black-owned businesses are sole proprietorships. One of the things that is incredibly difficult is to get federal funding as a sole proprietorship. Trust me, I know as a sole proprietor. In fact, if we look at this, we understand that PPP didn't go to sole proprietors, and it didn't go to Black businesses. Only 2% of businesses that were Black owned only 2% of the businesses that got PPP funds were Black owned. And what I want to do is make sure that sole proprietors and small businesses like mine, that are the lifeblood of the economy in Southwest Florida, have the ability to access funds, and that we're taking an equity lens and making sure that Black owned businesses have a seat at the table and have access to those funds and are not left out of all, including the federal construction.
Time has expired. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Banyai. Appreciate that. Our last question of the evening is from Isaac Dozier of Kappa Alpha Psi. Mr. Dozier, please take the honors. The floor is yours.
Thank you. There are several multifamily developments sprouting up within the inner core neighborhoods of Southwest Florida. As a result, there has been an increase in rental rates that are pricing out many of the local residents earning minimum wage, which has increase the need for attainable housing. Our question is, what is your strategy to bridge the gap between the need for more attainable housing and the reduction in federal funding that supports affordable homeownership?
Dr. Banyai, we can begin with you, please.
Part of that answer is simple. Fund it. Funding is political will, okay? That is what Congress is supposed to do, is make sure that funding goes to the right place. Okay, so if we're rolling back affordable housing and we know that we need it, we need dollars to come in for that. And we need also to be able to support people in their first time home ownership. The other thing that I want to offer in terms of thinking about this is not only supports for us to develop locally affordable housing, and part of that is going to be very local and making sure that there's the right investments and there is not subsidies going to high-end housing only, okay? But what we need to do is also ensure that we have a living wage. Right now, if we look at Southwest Florida, if you're a single mom with 2 kids, your living wage, according to the MIT calculator, is $27.31 per hour. That is way, way, way beyond what we have the capacity in most businesses in Southwest Florida to be able to do, not to mention the childcare cost that would cost to get those kids taken care of while mom is out working. What I am proposing is a federal jobs guarantee. This would be this would provide a floor of wages for jobs, and it would give anybody who wants to have a job. We have nonprofits that people can be working for. We have federal programs. It would really just be a way of rethinking how we go about business with the federal government, and would provide local jobs. It would actually revitalize the way that we have our economy. It would make those jobs more competitive, and it would make jobs who are already underpaying and exploiting the workforce to be more competitive, to provide better wages and better benefits. That's something that I am looking at from the federal level to ensure that people in Southwest Florida have the ability to come back from these incredibly high unemployment rates. Right now, 16.1% of Black people are unemployed around the country, but only 12% of white people. These both are astronomically high figures, and we're going to need those things to be addressed moving forward.
Time has expired. Thank you. Representative Donalds, please. Same question.
Listen, affordable housing, attainable housing is something that has been an issue in Southwest Florida for many, many years. One of the key issues is, frankly, that our local county commissions, and a lot of this starts at home, they refuse to actually increase densities per acre. I've worked in commercial real estate as part of my business background. Worked in commercial real estate for 4.5, 5 years. If you only build a certain amount of units per acre, the cost of each unit is going to be prohibitively higher. The other issue we're having in Southwest Florida is a lack of land to continue to do building construction. So every new project that goes up means each additional acre not developed becomes much more expensive. So the basic economics around the structures that we're building, in part, are what's relating to rent increases and property increases. I've been advocating for members of the commission in Collier County and Lee County to actually increase elevations and densities. It's funny how on the beach we can build high rises to the sky, but you can't go higher than 4 stories inland. If you want to make sure that housing is more affordable, there have to be more units per acre. That's just the bottom line. That's the way it is. Speaking to fund it, I think it's important we understand that there are many priorities that people have when you go into a state budget or a federal budget, but you cannot fund everything. I think through the course of this debate, it's important to understand. My opponent has advocated for universal health care. She's advocating for increased funding with respect to affordable housing. She's now advocated for guaranteed jobs. But where does all this money come from? We are already $27 trillion in debt. So the issue is we have to set the right priorities and have the right economics in place so that most people can be successful in their lives. Everything can't come out of the federal budget. And the one thing I will tell you, the more all of you get a chance to know me, is I will always be very direct with you about these things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Representative Donalds. Now we are at our segment where you as candidates have a final opportunity to speak to our audience through your closing statements. You each will have 2 minutes, and since we began the evening with Dr. Banyai, we'll begin the closing statements with Donalds.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to set this up. I want to thank you first to the Fort Myers Alumni Chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi and to all the representatives from the Divine Nine. My name is Byron Donalds. I'm the Republican nominee for Congress. I've served in our state's legislature for the past 4 years. I have a 17-year business background in commercial banking, insurance, and financial services. Long story short, I know how economies work. I've actually served in the legislative body, and I've actually have the track record of working with both sides of the aisle. My politics are conservative. I want to be direct and I want to be clear. But what my purpose is and what my philosophies are is making sure that government is clear, government is plain, government is easy to understand and interpret, so you can actually live your lives, and that you don't have rubrics and mazes of government bureaucracy that you're trying to figure out how to negotiate, which helps some people get through, but not all people get through. I think that's actually been a detriment to many people in our country, and I actually want to clean that up and really fix it. My goals for Southwest Florida are really clear. There's a couple. Number one, we do have to restart our economy. A lot of the issues we're talking about can actually be fixed by actually making sure people have their businesses operating and that they're going to work every day and that our children are going to school and they're learning. Number two, I want to make sure that we actually clean our water once and for all. That's not about speeches. That's not about grades. It's about being committed to getting the necessary funding to fix our water systems. And number three, I'm committed to making sure that we actually live up to our creed as a nation, that we make sure that we are one America where everybody has an opportunity to succeed, just like I had the opportunity to succeed growing up in Brooklyn, New York, and coming to Southwest Florida. My name is Byron Donalds. I hope I can earn your vote this November 3rd. God bless you all, and thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you very much, Representative Donalds. Dr. Banyai, please.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you so much to everybody for being here, and thank you so much for hosting this forum for us. And thank you to my opponent for showing up and having yet another invigorating debate. My name is Dr. Cindy Banyai. I am a mom and small business owner, and I'm fighting for our water, our health, in our community. I'm the Democratic nominee for U.S. House of Representatives, Florida 19, and I prioritize people. My vision is to create a Southwest Florida where the sun shines on everyone. That's really important to me. I run my business here helping nonprofits. I'm part-time faculty at Florida Gulf Coast University in the Department of Political Science and Public Administration. I have expertise in good governance. I've published books on it all over the world. I've helped countries become more efficient and effective at serving people. Not the powerful, not corporations, but people. For me, when it comes down to how our government can work, it's all about priorities and influence. I prioritize people in our community. My influence comes from you. I'm committing to participatory practices in our government. I am not funded by corporate PACs. I do not have big money donors pulling my strings. I'm not a politician. I'm a mom. I care about our kids, my kids, and yours. That's what's important to me. I will not be bought. I will not be sold. My values are making sure that I am putting us first. I am truthful and authentic in my positions, but I am also truthful when I say I'm a fighter for you. I'm a former professional boxer, so I can take the hits that Washington, D.C. can give, and I will give them right back to make sure that the people of Southwest Florida get the representative, the servant leader that they deserve. So I really hope that I've earned your trust and your vote here today. I would love to have your support. You can check me out here at media at SWFL Mom 2020. And if you want to learn a little bit more about my economic philosophy, you can check out the recent podcast from Macron on Cheese. You can learn all about it. Thank you so much.
That is it. Thank you very both Dr. Banyai and State Representative Donalds. I want to take this opportunity to extend our profound thanks to both of you for joining us tonight. And thanks to the fraternities and sororities of the Divine Nine for participating in this candidates forum. Now I would like to take the opportunity to introduce you to the leader of the Fort Myers Alumni Chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Incorporated, Mr. Hamid Hunter.
Good evening, everybody. I want to take a moment to close things out and say a few thank yous. I want to thank, first of all, Dr. Banyai Representative Donalds, Mr. Kevin Anderson, and Ms. Jacquelyn McMiller. I want to also recognize the members of our Political Action Committee who you see on the line here, Mr. Dennison, Mr. Love, Mr. Dozier, hold on. Okay, Mr. Dozier, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Burns, Brother Allen. I want to thank all of you for the hard work and dedication you put into making tonight a reality. To the members of our Divine Nine panelists, thank you so much for choosing to partner with us in this most noble endeavor. And thank you, Brother Stockton, Brother Pastor Stockton, for representing life and representing Kappa Alpha Psi well. Politics aside, all politics aside, I'm so proud of both Dr. Banyai and Representative Donalds. I'm so proud to see a woman and a Black man from Southwest Florida running for this seat. Kudos to both of you, and best of wishes to you both. This election is likely one of the most important elections within the past 20 years, and probably the most important election for the next 20 years. We are in times when people are being led towards politically extreme points of view, and people have politically extreme points of view. Our next representative will have to deal with the post-COVID-19 economy and economic growth. Our next representative will have to deal with the homeless, policing, government accountability, freedom of expression and assembly, housing, and executive overreach. It is truly a privilege to serve our local communities, and I hope that both of you feel the weight of the office as you move around the district and engage with citizens. I thank you both for taking the risk of running for office and making the commitment to serve, committing to do what is best for the state and best for our country. As a citizen, I ask you both to do one thing. No matter which party takes the White House, be the co-equal branch, check the president, and put us and the Constitution ahead of partisan rancor. I ask that everybody on the line and in YouTube land, take somebody with you to the polls. If you have a mail-in ballot, go drop it off. Vote early. God bless you. God bless the state of Florida. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you. Okay, Brother Shaw, take us out.
We certainly appreciate all the contributions that each of you have made. Take care, go forth, and do great things. Good night.